What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Sad Nixon, and today we're going to have a brand new video, a new kind of video that I'm doing. This one's called The Best Three Lines. So let's get right into that. So, a big question that comes up a lot, and people kind of want to know the answer, is what are the best lines in 7P ranked? And based on data from 12,000 plus games that I have, that are all 7P ranked SH games, Secret Hitler games, we can see which lines actually result in the highest percentage chance of a fascist win, just based on all those game results. Now, if we look at that data, the top three lines that emerge, disregarding Hitler position, I'm not looking at where Hitler is in these lines, I'm just looking at the lines themselves, are 123, 127, and 253, which you can see here. They all have above a 56% win rate. They're all really close to each other in win rate. They're all really, really good. On the other end of the spectrum, you would find 347, which is like a 30% win rate or something. So these are really good, especially considering fascists only win like 50% of games overall. Now, partially due to data size limitations, just because there's not that much data, I couldn't limit these statistics to high elo only. I know some people might think that would be a better thing to look at, is just the high elo games, but if we looked at that, we would only be looking at maybe even just a dozen games or less for each of these lines, which wouldn't be very representative. So I can't really look at that with the data that we have. Maybe someday I'll get more data and I'll be able to look at that. But anyways, that's what I found, statistically speaking, for the best lines. But, we can go further. And what I wanted to know is what would a purple do? I wanted to get some insight into why these games might be good and whether or not they're really good at the top level of the game. So I got opinions on each of these lines from 11 current high elo players, and those were Freakin', God Medusa, Imbapingu, Kexelas, Lion Lizard, Maximovic96, Mellow, Secret Jeb, Source Talk, Starsheep, and Dice DB. These are all people who got really high in the seasonal elo last season, so these are all really, top of their game right now, high elo players. And I asked each of them how to play each line, whether the lines are truly top three, and which other lines might be top three material. And I got a lot of really useful stuff from all these guys, so thank you so much. You all were really super helpful for this video. Couldn't have done it without you. I'm a little bit of a scrub myself, Secret Hitler-wise, so I gotta turn to the pros. And in this video, I am going to discuss all my findings on this. So, let's start out with our 1, 2, 3 lines. Now, these are supposedly the number 3 line in the game, based on our statistics. And what I found when I asked the high elos is they recommended basically 2 basic strategies. One of them is the 0-3 or 1-3 start, and what that means is you want to, as fascists, force a position in which you have 3 fascist cards on the table to start with, without getting a single lib down or maybe playing 1 lib down. Either way, sometimes an 0-3 start isn't possible because of the deck, but you want to get as close to that as possible, and that's one way that you can start on this line. You can manipulate that really easily because you have the first 3 positions. If 1 plays red, then 2's going to play, and 2 can play red, and then 3 can play and also play red potentially. And the other big strategy that people pointed out was going for a 4-1 start, or playing really heavily a lot of libs, because you have 2 players that are in 1, 2, 5, 6, which are the people who get played the most in the early game. And if you're playing those libs, you can be sheeping the remaining liberals in those positions, or in 4-7. You can sheep those people by going for that high lib start, and then once you get to that 4th lib, you just kind of stop playing lib cards, and you can get to Hitler zone in that way. And some other notes that people told me were, it's okay in this line to confirm a lib in either seat 6 or seat 7, depending on what happens, if they're a weak player. Like if you see, the weakest player in the room, maybe a green player, is in seat 7, you're seat 3 going 3-4 after 2 cons have already played. You can comp that and confirm 7. That does, at 7's getting SE'd there, obviously. 7 has to play, but 7 has to solve the whole game. They have to solve exact lines, maybe, and that's hard. From an 0-3 position or 1-3 position, it's really hard to come back from that as a lib, especially when you have to solve all games, so it's not that bad to confirm a lib there. If there is a really strong player in those positions, that you would be confirming maybe it's better to play blues heavily and try to sheep the other libs. You can make that choice. Now, after that 4-1 start, I also got some people that said, you can TD twice once you get to Hitler zone if the Bs have kind of been hidden, if the Bs have been dropped by the fascists by that point. So, you play up to 4-1, you get up to 4-3. If you found a B or two Bs, TD twice is pretty good if in the end you're getting a fascist into play still, something like that. So you can do that. And if that isn't the case, if you didn't find blues in those, if those were, real triple reds, then, maybe you even want to make up blues as fascist if you're president in that kind of situation in order to avoid the TD twice, because libs are going to want a TD twice. And if there are still lots of Bs in the deck, if there's both Bs left in the deck, then, it would be bad to TD twice for you maybe. Now, as for whether or not this is top 3, 64%, 7 out of 11, said that they thought it might be a top 3 line. Not for sure, but they thought maybe it might be. So that's a good amount. That's, most of them. Some people definitely thought it wasn't. I got a bunch of people saying that in particular they thought 1-2-4 was better, which is interesting. But yeah, 1-2-3, pretty good line, turns out. And that's how you play it. Now, moving on to the next slide, we have 1-2-7. So in 1-2-7, this was the line that I got the most kind of strategy ideas, which is really an interesting thing. A lot of people had a lot of very different opinions on this. I got people saying, play 2 blues, play 1-5 and 2-6 blue, and then hope for some tanks in 5 and 6. I got some people saying you should go triple red on 1-5, and then actually seat 2 should go 2-4 and attempt at 2-4-7 triangle in order to, get that into play. Hopefully that might play, sometimes 4-6 plays, sometimes 4-7 plays, depending. And then some people were saying, similar to the last line, 1-2-3, you should actually go for that 0-3 start, and then either you can out on Cuckoo if you've in someone lib along the way, if 2 ends lib, or you can confirm a lib and let them solve, or you can go for that blue heavy 4-1 start. So there's a lot of different ideas that I got coming out. Once again, you got to look out for, is there a weak player in the confirmed lib spot in this case? And yeah, this one, a lot of people expressed surprise, I think, that this was a top 3 line. According to the stats, a lot of people thought it was really bad, or, maybe not bad, but just kind of mediocre, and there are better lines out there, like, again, 1-2-4 and other lines. Only 27% thought that it was actually a top 3 line. And some of them expressed that with the kind of condition that, in all ELOs, this is a top 3 line. In high ELO, it's not. So, yeah, this was a controversial line for sure. Now, moving on to our number 1 line, supposedly 2-3-5. I got, again, 2 basic strategies on this, very similar to the 1-2-3 lines, where you either want to go for that 0-3 or 1-3 start, or the 4-1 start. And again, since you have a fascist in 1-5, a fascist in 2-6, and a fascist in 3-4-7, the 0-3 start is very possible, right? You can play, especially if a lib tanks on Gov1, and then, you can drop on 2-6, and then 3 can drop, etc. But the 4-1 start is also was suggested by a lot of people, and was maybe even more popular on this one than on the last one. And I also got some other ideas that were kind of interesting and very specific, which is someone said you should go 1-5 and 2-6 blue, and then 5-1 triple red, and just try not to conf. And you still have people in play in that situation. Just try to take it into HC in a kind of very gentle, low info way without confing. Someone said you should go 1-5 red and then 2-6 blue, and then 3-7 can either inv conf, and then once it gets back around to 2, you can actually let go 2-5 for the 2-5-6 triangle, and try to get 2-5 SE'd, maybe try to play blue even on 2-5 and 5-6, and then hope that 6 tanks. Or you can go 1-5 red, 2-6 blue, and then 3-7 and inv lib, and set that up for an out on Cuckoo on 7-3. So you can do that as well if you're okay with that. That does out you, but some people thought that might be acceptable in this case. Again, confirming a weak player as lib is okay. Someone commented that ideally you would want Hitty to be in seat 3 if you're confirming a weak player as lib, just for kind of highlighting positioning, which is an interesting opinion. I think someone else said that in general they kind of want to be seat 3 hitty in this line, which is interesting. And most people, 91%, 10 out of 11, thought that it might be a top 3 line, at least in the context of all ELO ranges. So that's, this line, as it turned out, this is supposed to be the number 1 line, and the most people thought out of the high ELOs that it might be top 3. So yeah, this is a really interesting result. People kind of tend to agree that 235 is really good. So what else do we have? So I also asked, of course, what else could be a top 3 line? Because a lot of people especially said that maybe 127 isn't top 3, and I asked for, what else could be top 3 if not that. And in this slide, I do have some stats that are based on only 1700 and up games, games where the average ELO of each team is above 1700. And just a disclaimer on this is based on limited data. I thought that 1700 was kind of a happy medium where I'm looking at pretty high ELO games, but I still do have some kind of data granularity, some level of, a bigness of data, if I might say that. But of course, it's still not that much data. It's probably not as reliable as the full data set. But anyways, the high ELOs offered 4 options really prominently. They offered 124, 245, 126, and 125. And I found these interesting. These are all kind of top 10 lines in the game in terms of all ELOs. So these are, they're pretty perceptive about what are good lines just based on intuition. 124 got offered especially a lot, like I've been saying. But the interesting thing is when you look at the 1700 and up games, 126 and 125 are really up there in terms of really good lines, although not the best lines. But 124 and 245 are actually significantly worse in high ELO games than they are in all ELOs. So that's a really interesting side effect, especially considering 124. Yeah, but like I said, this is limited data. This may or may not be accurate at all. In terms of the top 3 lines in that 1700 plus data set, those turn out to be 167, 567, and 467. And 467 to me is really shocking because that's a really bad line in all ELOs. And so this is what kind of might tell you that these stats are too limited. They can't tell us anything that's that good because I don't know if people would say that 467 is a good line. It seems to me like it's not a good line, just in my opinion, but it's the best line in the data set that we have for 1700 up. So I don't know, maybe the meta was in a weird place at that point in time. And when we look at the overall top 3 that we have been talking about, 123, 127, and 235, in that 1700 plus data set, they're all pretty good lines, especially 123, it turns out, is still a pretty, awesome line. 127 and 235 turn out to be a little bit more mediocre. It's interesting that 235 turns out to be mediocre, but again, unreliable data set that we're looking at here, not big enough to really draw conclusions. Maybe someday Vig will let me get the big data set. We'll see. But anyways, that's some interesting stuff based on those other lines that were offered up. And I also got some other kind of general notes about, these lines and the game, and I want to talk about that. And, some interesting stuff here. I got some comments that, in every game as fascist, you either, there's like 3 options kind of. You either want to get a fascist SE'd, you want to position in Hitler zone such that you're TDing twice into a place where a fascist is playing in HC, even as chancellor. If you can get on SC even if a fascist isn't president, if you can get a fascist as chancellor, maybe you can top deck twice to a position where they're playing again, and then you win in veto zone if you get lucky in some of those blue heavy starts. Also I got some comments that if you get RBB early, it's good to force and hope a lib gets triple red rather than choicing or maybe underclaiming. Forcing can make you look good. Also a comment that, it's really up to the fascists who are in 1256 to decide how the game is played. And in the best lines in the game, they have a lot of influence. There's a lot of people in 1256, maybe even all 3, if you're positioned well enough, and you can really take control of the game as fascists and dictate things. And if you're a fascist and you're not in those lines, you kind of have to follow their lead and see how they're playing and play to that strength based on the kind of strategies that we've seen. someone said, these three lines and other good lines have one thing in common, which is that they're all really flexible and they have many routes to victory. Libs don't have to tank and get RRR for a win, although that might be good. You can win in other ways. And I really, have seen that with these lines where you have these drastically different strategies where you could either play blue heavy or you could play red heavy in the early game. Some people saying that they like to do both and mix it up. And that really speaks to how versatile these lines are. Whether or not you get a blue on the first gov, whether or not you get into HC early, you can win regardless in these lines. That's what makes them good. Someone also had the opinion that a line with an opportunity for a fast overclaim is actually a good line, which is an interesting opinion because a lot of people would say, a 1-5x line isn't that good. But with a certain playstyle, you could make it work. If you are making those overclaims, if you're ready to do that, then that can be a convincing sheeping tactic if you have that fast kind of setup. So yeah, a lot of great stuff from these high elos that we see here. A lot of sage wisdom, and yeah, I think that it's really important to take away that these notes and this info. They're just suggestions, and you can play these all kinds of ways, and that's what makes them good lines. Like I said, they're very versatile. So, yeah, if there are any questions on any of this, please feel free to leave a comment, or you can DM me on Discord. I'm Sad Nixon, of course, on the Secret Hitler Discord. I'm really very willing to look into these statistics and get some data for you if you want that data. Yeah, it's I find this stuff really, really cool. And, I'll be doing a video at some point later where I'm looking at the worst lines in the game, and I'm gonna ask some people again how to play those lines and why those lines are bad, and if maybe there are worse lines. So yeah, I'll do another video like this soon. Thank you so much for watching. Sad Nixon, the People's Captain. See ya.